You're lying in bed at 3 in the morning asking yourself the same question again. Am I the problem? Your relationships keep falling apart. People keep getting upset with you. Nothing seems to work out the way you hope. And there's this nagging voice saying maybe, just maybe, you're the common denominator in all your failed connections. But here's what makes this question so dangerous. Sometimes asking it means you're self-aware enough to grow. And sometimes asking it means you've been gaslit so thoroughly that you're taking blame for things that were never your fault. In this video, I'll walk you through a psychological self-awareness test that helps you figure out if you're genuinely the problem or if you've been manipulated into thinking you are. We'll explore the difference between accountability and self-blame, the signs that indicate real problematic patterns versus trauma responses, and how to tell if you're in a growth moment or a gaslighting situation. You'll learn which behaviors actually need changing, how to distinguish between being difficult and having boundaries, and most importantly, how to develop real self-awareness without destroying your self-worth. So stick around, because this might be the most honest conversation you've had with yourself in years. Here's the thing about self-awareness. It's supposed to help you grow, not destroy you. Real self-awareness is looking at yourself clearly, seeing both strengths and weaknesses, and using that information to become better. But toxic self-awareness? That's when you blame yourself for everything, when you pathologize your normal needs, when you mistake other people's projections for your own flaws. Psychologically, the ability to ask, "Am I the problem?" is actually a sign of emotional intelligence. Truly problematic people rarely question themselves. They blame everyone else. But here's the trap. Empathetic people, trauma survivors, people in toxic relationships, they ask this question constantly while the actual problem person never does. So the very fact that you're asking might mean you're not the problem at all. And here's why this matters. If you can't tell the difference between legitimate self-reflection and internalized blame, you'll keep fixing things that aren't broken while ignoring actual growth areas. You'll apologize for existing while avoiding real accountability. Understanding where you actually need to grow versus where you need to stop apologizing is how you build genuine self-awareness. First question, do multiple people in different contexts give you the same feedback? This is crucial. If one person says you're too sensitive, that's their opinion. If 5 unconnected people, your therapist, your best friend, your sister, your coworker, all independently mention that you have trouble accepting feedback, that's a pattern. Real problems show up consistently across different relationships and situations. Picture this, your partner says you're defensive. You dismiss it as them being critical. Then your boss mentions you seem resistant to suggestions. Your friend says you take things too personally. These are different people with no connection to each other seeing the same behavior. That's not a conspiracy. That's a mirror you need to look into. Psychologically, this is called convergent validity. When multiple independent sources observe the same thing, it's likely accurate. One person's feedback might be projection or manipulation. But when the same theme emerges from various people who care about you, it's worth examining. The key word is care about you. Feedback from people invested in your growth is different from criticism from people invested in your compliance. Here's the insight. If you're hearing the same thing from multiple trustworthy sources, don't get defensive. Get curious. Ask for specific examples. Try to see what they're seeing. But if only one person, especially someone who benefits from you being the problem, is telling you you're broken, that's not feedback. That's control. Big difference. Second question, are you willing to change or just willing to defend? When someone points out a problem with your behavior, what's your first response? Do you immediately explain why you did it, justify the circumstances, or point out what the other person did first? Or do you pause, consider if there's truth in it, and genuinely explore how you might do better? Imagine your friend says, "You always cancel plans last minute and it hurts." If your immediate reaction is, "Well, you canceled on me 3 months ago," or "I have anxiety, I can't help it," you're defending, not reflecting. But if you can sit with the discomfort and think, "They're right, I do that, and it impacts them," that's accountability. That's growth. The psychology here is about ego defense mechanisms. Everyone has them. But people who are genuinely self-aware can lower those defenses long enough to hear hard truths. People who are the problem stay in permanent defense mode. They're never wrong. It's always someone else's fault or justified by circumstances. They might say, "I'm working on it," but nothing actually changes because they don't believe they need to. The reality check: willingness to change is shown through action, not words. Saying, "I'll do better," while repeating the same patterns is manipulation, including self-manipulation. Real change looks like discomfort, effort, slip-ups with genuine remorse, and visible progress over time. If you find yourself defending more than reflecting, that's information about where growth needs to happen. Third question: do people feel safe being honest with you? This is a big one. Can people tell you when you've hurt them without you falling apart, getting angry, or making it about how hurt you are that they think you hurt them? Can they give you feedback without walking on eggshells? Or do people around you learn to stay quiet because your reaction to criticism is worse than just tolerating your behavior? Think about your closest relationships. When someone's upset with you, do they tell you directly? Or do you hear about it later from someone else? Do people seem comfortable saying, "Hey, that thing you said bothered me," or do they drop hints and hope you'll figure it out? If people can't be honest with you, you're probably the problem, or at least part of it. Psychologically, this is about emotional safety. Healthy relationships require the ability to give and receive feedback without catastrophizing. If you respond to criticism with rage, tears, victimhood, or shutting down completely, you're training people not to be honest with you. Then you exist in a bubble where no one tells you when you're wrong, and you never get the chance to genuinely improve. Here's the truth: being told you messed up should feel uncomfortable, not devastating. If every piece of feedback feels like an attack on your entire being, that's fragile ego, not self-awareness. Work on that. Build the capacity to hear hard things without collapsing. That's where real growth happens. But also, if someone uses feedback as a weapon to constantly tear you down, that's different. That's abuse disguised as honesty. Fourth question: do you take responsibility or do you play victim? When things go wrong, is it always someone else's fault? Bad luck? Circumstances beyond your control? Or can you identify your role in the situation, even if you weren't the only factor? Victim mentality is one of the clearest signs someone lacks self-awareness. Picture a scenario where you got into an argument with your partner. The victim version: they just attacked me out of nowhere. I didn't do anything. They're crazy. The accountable version: we both escalated. I said something dismissive that triggered them, then they raised their voice and I shut down. We both contributed to that going badly. See the difference? The psychology of victim mentality is complex. Sometimes it's a trauma response. When you've been genuinely victimized repeatedly, your brain defaults to that framework. But sometimes it's a manipulation tactic to avoid accountability. And sometimes it's just ego protection. If nothing is ever your fault, you never have to face your flaws or do the uncomfortable work of changing. The way up call: life happens to everyone. Bad luck exists. Other people do wrong things. But if you're never responsible for anything negative, you're lying to yourself. Accountability isn't about blame or shame. It's about power. When you own your part, you can change it. When you're always the victim, you're always powerless. Which do you want to be? Fifth question: are your relationships reciprocal or one-sided? Look at your relationships honestly. Are you always giving or always taking? Do you show up for others or do they always show up for you? Real self-awareness includes seeing how you function in relationships. If every relationship is one-sided and you're always the one benefiting, you might be the problem. Think about your friendships. When they're going through something, are you there? When they need support, do you offer it without being asked? Or is the friendship mostly about them listening to your problems, accommodating your needs, and celebrating your wins while you're conveniently unavailable when they need you? Be honest. Psychologically, this reveals something called self-centeredness versus self-awareness. Self-centered people think the world revolves around them. Their needs are urgent. Everyone else's can wait. They don't notice when they're taking more than giving because they're not paying attention to others' experiences. Self-aware people see the whole picture. They notice imbalance and work to correct it. Here's what you need to face. If people keep pulling away from you, if friendships keep fading, if you're always wondering why people don't invest in you the way you think you invest in them, examine your actual behavior. Not your intentions, your behavior. Are you the friend you'd want to have? Are you the partner you'd want to be with? Answer honestly. Sixth question: Do you repeat the same patterns expecting different results? This is the definition of insanity, and it's also a sign you're stuck in a loop without self-awareness. If every relationship ends the same way, if you keep getting fired for the same reasons, if the same conflicts keep emerging, you're the common variable. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern you're creating. Imagine someone who's been in 5 relationships and every single one ended because their partner couldn't handle their intensity. At some point, you have to ask, is everyone else wrong, or is your intensity actually overwhelming? If you keep getting the same result, you're doing something to create it, even if you can't see what it is yet. The psychology here is about blind spots. Everyone has them. They're the behaviors and patterns we can't see in ourselves because they're too close, too defended, too painful to acknowledge. Breaking repetitive patterns requires you to get uncomfortable, to question your narrative, to consider that maybe your version of events isn't complete. The hard truth, if you're experiencing the same problems repeatedly and you think it's everyone else, you're not self-aware. You're in denial. Self-awareness means recognizing your patterns, understanding your triggers, and actively working to respond differently. It means getting help, doing therapy, reading books, asking for feedback, whatever it takes to break the cycle you're stuck in. So, what can you actually do with this self-awareness test? First, journal your honest answers to these questions. Don't perform for an imaginary audience. Be brutally honest with yourself. Where are you genuinely struggling? Where have you been taking false blame? Second, ask someone you trust for their perspective. Not someone who'll coddle you or tear you down, but someone who'll tell you the truth with love. And third, commit to one area of growth. You can't fix everything at once. Pick the pattern that's causing the most damage and start there. Bottom line, sometimes you are the problem. And that's okay. Being the problem means you have the power to be the solution. But sometimes you're not the problem, you've just been convinced you are by people who refuse to take accountability for themselves. The goal isn't to figure out if you're good or bad. It's to see yourself clearly so you can grow. So here's my question. What did this self-awareness test reveal to you? What's one pattern you're ready to change? Drop a comment and let's be honest together. And if this video gave you clarity, hit that like button and subscribe for more psychology content. Up next, watch my video on dark psychology, manipulation tactics used on you daily. Remember, self-awareness without self-compassion is just self-destruction. Be honest, but be kind. You're human. You're learning. That's enough.